Hi, Embracing Only podcast family. This is Archita. We are introducing impact moments, actionable insights that highlight the best and powerful learning moments and wisdom from our past episodes of incredible guests. In this highlight reel, you'll hear leadership lessons from a combat veteran, taking action to be anti-racist, mastering workplace negotiations, leveraging your uniqueness for success. We'll take a topic and break it down in a short, snappy episode. So click on the link in the show notes to continue listening to these impact moments with our amazing guests. Animah, so I think you were in a podcast a while ago, and you speak about redeeming bullying leaders, but also differentiating between strong, assertive, and bullying behavior. So could you help unpack those three kind of behaviors and then talk about when you do then identify bullying behavior? Again, this is where Olivia and I differ. I'm just like, I think Olivia would be like, I'm done, you're written off. And I'm just like, oh, there's still hope.
Actually, I love that podcast. And I just want to first pay tribute to the man who hosted it, Michael Banks. He passed away a few months ago, and I just want to honor him as well. It was just beautiful the way he'd asked the questions and allowed me to open up. And what I shared for your listeners in that podcast was that I was bullied as a young lawyer, and seriously, in the legal profession, this is so common. And so in my mind, this is how you train young lawyers. So as I got a bit more senior, and after 2 years, you consider, oh, you're more senior, you've now got lawyers under you kind of thing. I took on that mantle of bullying because that was the way to train them. Because in my head is, well, if you can't handle me, how are you going to stand before a really strong judge who's yelling at you? You have to withstand all this. It's a tough profession. Deal with it. Now I've changed, which is basically like, why does it have to be a tough profession? Why are we so nasty to each other? We can change it. But then that's how I was. And it was only when I actually moved to oil and gas and I joined Schlumberger, and Jamal, who was my first boss, and he knows I tell this story a lot. In the first week, I said something to one of the people who reported to me, and then she got very upset. She went running to the toilet and she was in tears. And I was like, what did I say? Oh my God, you couldn't stand in front of a judge. And then I got called into his office. And he was the general manager of several countries in Schlumberger. And he called me into the office and said, I don't know what you all do in a law firm, but this is entirely not acceptable in Schlumberger. So you can see this is leadership in action, right? Of course, at that time, I just wanted to swallow me up and take me. But essentially after that, I went through this journey of basically learning how to do leadership properly, not yell at people or whatever, or make sarcastic remarks, which is what I'd done. But I think it was also a journey of self-awareness. And this is why I say that now I advocate issues like this. So that's why I say that there is redemption. You don't have to write off people straight away. So I'd be willing to work with people who are, the main thing is that they are open to learning and acknowledging, oh, yeah, I did wrong there. So not getting all defensive and then putting up. And so the work that we've done in bullying, we talk a lot about DARVO, which is if someone was to say, hey, harass me, or you've bullied me, or that was racist or sexist, the typical DARVO response comes up, which is deny and say, no, it wasn't. You're too sensitive, or no, or it was not my intention, that kind of thing. Intention, I always tell people, is irrelevant because it's really about the impact on the person who's been hurt. So you have to own it, right? So that's the thing. So deny and then attack and then make it about their fault. Well, you did this, that made me say this. Or look, women who dress this way deserve that kind of thing. So the whole victim blaming. And then reverse victim and offender. Look, you're now impacting my career by reporting this. So I'm the victim here. So I think once we saw that pattern, and it plays out in so many cases. So I think these are the things that I would talk to people in leadership about, to recognize this, because they'd often be talking to someone who's been accused of harassment. And they say, oh, it couldn't possibly be Bob. Bob's so nice. He plays golf with us every weekend. He would never do that. But they don't recognize the patterns and the almost, I also call it grooming. So harassers would groom leaders, be really nice to them. And I've seen this seriously with my own eyes several times.
I feel like you're playing out the last 18 months of one of my corporate careers.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
This is decades of HR nonsense being replayed in 10 seconds here. But yes, it's everywhere. And you hit so many things in your story there that I'm trying to like take notes and keep up. But I think there are a couple things that I wanted to point out. A while back in my career, I had the pleasure of working with a company called Partners in Leadership, and I think they've renamed themselves since. But they have this model. It's called the results pyramid, right? And I think the results pyramid plays out in human behavior as well. So what it basically says is at the base of the pyramid are experiences. So people have experiences every day, right? Those experiences create beliefs. Then once you form a belief, your actions are going to be in line with your belief. And then you're going to get positive or negative results, right? That's essentially the model. So what you're speaking about here are people in the workplace. And I want to tackle you for a second here. When you said you were perpetuating some of the same toxic behavior in the system because you had experiences that said, this is how you have to lead, or this is what leadership looks like, or here's what I've viewed working in this space from your lens. And so you mirror that behavior. I can't tell you how many women Archita and I speak to that are in these male-dominated fields that feel as if they need to behave in a certain way because they've had experiences that then turn around and perpetuate the same system that was making us anxious and afraid and upset in the first place.
Absolutely.
This is the horror of said system and the limiting factor of the disease that I call fear that allows these systems to continue to, you're getting sucked into it and you become a soldier for the system and you don't even realize that this is happening. So on the heels of that, I think I would say to women, just to close that point home, is authenticity is your best friend. When you abandon yourself to align your behaviors to your experiences because you think this is how I must behave in order to achieve success, this is when you're surrendering your power, right? We can all disrupt the system if we decide, I'm not aligning to this craziness. I'm going to make this craziness align to me, right? With some healthy habits and leading in a different way. But it takes each of us to have courage in our own spaces to be like, I'm not going to do it this way, so that we can create new experiences for people underneath us or maybe even above us that are watching.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that you touched several things here, Olivia, one is, okay, disrupt the system. And some women do, they will disrupt, yet they're still left to dry. They're hanging there by themselves. They're the only one who disrupt. And everyone else is still, we can't be like, I've been in that position a lot. And I'm like, I don't care. You don't want to come along, don't. But I think really disrupting the system takes more than one or two women. In this case, we're talking about women, right? But it could be other people who are a minority, whether we're talking about from a context of race or other areas, right? So one of the things that I realized is that women are feel they have to behave differently because they're working in a system, whether it is the company or the industry or the whole corporate world, which has been designed by men for men. And I can take it a step further. It has been designed by white men for white men, the whole world, right? It has been designed by, I can even go further. I can say it's been designed by cis, straight, white men from certain educational background for the same kind of men. Everyone else has to adapt to it, which means we lose elements of ourselves and we can't be ourselves, because you mentioned authenticity. When we recognize these patterns and we see that the systems themselves are flawed and they're upheld actually by a minority, and that we're all changing ourselves and who we are. Maybe we are downplaying some aspects of our identity, whether we're talking about our race, our gender, our sexuality, our neurodiversity, whatever it is, when we downplay them, our own brilliance, our own authenticity is not coming out. We're not shining and we're miserable. Let's face it. A lot of people are miserable at work because they're not allowed to be themselves, or actually, not that they're not allowed, they feel they can't be themselves. Nobody said you can't do this. Or maybe some did, but it's become like that it's almost, well, this is what corporate culture is like. Professionalism, if you think about it, is actually really constraining. When we say, well, don't put your hair like that, that's not professional. Or you're speaking with a funny accent, that's not professional. When I say funny accent from England, it basically means that you're not speaking the posh kind of English, right? Queen's English. But these are really constraining things. And I think this is where we need to challenge it every time we come across it. And for me, it's a daily affair, right? But it's exhausting. It is exhausting if we're always doing that. And so I want to share something like back in Malaysia, it would be, for me, a lot of it was about gender. Oh, come on, you guys, why are you not listening to women or whatever? I was not the only woman in senior management meetings. And so they'd roll their eyes and they're like, well, there's Animah on a high horse and whatever it is. I come to the UK and then there's a different dimension because you see, in Malaysia, I was the majority, right? In terms of race. I come to the West. I'm not the majority. And because I'm white passing, I'm biracial, by the way, a lot of people just assume I'm white. And it's like my Asianness, they don't want that Asian side. And it's, or they like, you're Muslim? It's like a surprise. And I'm like, well, what's wrong with that? I'm not going to go, what? You're Christian? It's just weird. And we don't want to see that part of you. We just want that white part of you, that kind of thing, because that fits in. The rest of it doesn't. And it's erasure. It is a form of erasure. But I didn't experience that until I moved here. And I started feeling that, seeing that. And I'm like, oh my God, now I get it. Now I see what's been happening to me too. I didn't see that. So it's almost like this gaslighting. And I think I talk a lot now about white supremacy and in terms of systems and dealing with the fragility, the white fragility. Well, actually, no, that's not even the best phrase of putting it, but the denials and what are you talking about? That's put in our way. But this is where, if we look at the systems, I was giving a talk yesterday, and this was about conversations that have anything to do that's coming out of the global South, for example, because I'm really strongly talking about decolonizing, about global South countries. Why are we not heard? Why is everything focused on the West? Why do we only hear Western narratives? Let's try and disrupt that. Let's flip it. Let's hear more stories out of Asia and Africa and Latin America. Why, and the islands, why are we not hearing these stories? And people of the global majority from the West, why are these stories not coming up? Because actually, if we really looked at it from a majority perspective, these are the stories that should be out there more so than white Western stories.